Welcome back to a brand new motherfucking video. It's your boy Sean Waddell. Welcome back to Waddell's World. So, in today's video, we are going to be covering cold cases. Now, I do have a special announcement that I want to talk about, but I'm going to talk about that at the end of the video. So, let's get into this. Peace.
Mikio, Yasuko, Nina, and Rei Miyazawa remain unsolved despite a plethora of evidence being left behind by the killer, including blood, DNA, and fingerprints. I covered this case on the latest episode of my podcast, but here's an overview because this is a crazy one. The Miyazawa family was made up of Mikio, who worked in marketing, his wife Yasuko, a teacher, and their two children, 8-year-old Nina and 6-year-old Rei. The family lived in Setagaya in the western suburbs of Tokyo. This was their home. It was actually two homes that were connected on the outside, so they lived in one part and then relatives lived in the other part. The homes weren't connected from the inside and you had to go outside to get from one to the other. The home was adjacent to a park and skate park, and they lived there for 10 years, but in the late 1990s, most of their neighbors started to move away because the park was set to expand. And by December 2000, the neighborhood, which once housed 200 families, was only made up of the Miyazawas and their relatives and two other families on the street. And the Miyazawas themselves were planning to move a few months into 2001. December 30th, 2000 was a normal day for the family. Nina watched a show with her grandmother Haruko next door until around 9:30 p.m. and then around 10:30 p.m. Mikio logged onto his password-protected email. And that was the last known movement of the family. The next day, Haruko called her daughter Yasuko to make New Year's Eve plans, but Yasuko didn't answer. This was bizarre, so Haruko went next door to check on the family, and once again, they didn't answer the door. Haruko used her key to let herself in and found a horrific scene. All four family members had been killed the night before, and they were discovered about 10 hours later. Investigators believed that 6-year-old Rei was killed first, and he was strangled to death in his bed on the second floor. Mikio, hearing the disturbance, rushed upstairs and encountered the killer, who then turned to him and started stabbing him multiple times. The attack was so brutal that part of the knife broke off in Mikio's skull. The killer then attempted to use that same knife to attack Yasuko and Nina, but it was broken, so eventually the killer grabbed another knife and stabbed Yasuko and Nina to death. This quadruple homicide was horrific, and it was being investigated as a home invasion robbery, and the killer left behind so much evidence. The killer remained in the home after committing the murders for at least 2 hours, and during that time, he ransacked the house, ate food, drank tea, and cleaned up his injuries. He also used the family computer, which connected to the internet on December 31st at 1:18 a.m. for 5 minutes. The killer left behind all of these clothes other than the shoes. They were able to determine what shoes he was wearing from footprints outside and inside of the house, but the rest of the clothes seen on this mannequin here were all left behind by the killer. He also left behind blood, DNA, and fingerprints. But unfortunately, when the evidence was logged and checked against police databases, both in Japan and worldwide, there was not a single match. Investigators on the case followed every lead that came in, including tips from a taxi driver who picked up 3 men, one who was injured in the area that night, and witness accounts of people seeing a man walking in the park behind the home. But no suspects were identified, and with no DNA or fingerprint matches, the case started to go cold. But that didn't stop investigators. They continued to visit the home in Setagaya to honor the family and do everything they could to solve the murders. With the DNA, they were able to determine more about the killer. He was believed to be between 15 to 35 years old, and maternal DNA indicated a mother of European descent, and paternal DNA indicated a father of East Asian descent. Unfortunately, this still did not lead to any suspects, and the biggest question was, what was the motive here? By all accounts, the Miyazawas were a well-liked family and had no enemies. A week before the murders, Mikio confronted a group of teens at the skate park who were being really rowdy and noisy, but it didn't turn into a fight or anything aggressive, so this didn't seem to be the motive. The investigation into the Miyazawa family murders is the largest in Japanese history. Over the years, the investigation has involved over 246,000 individuals, and they've collected over 12,000 pieces of evidence. As of 2019, 35 officers still work on the case, and according to the Tokyo Weekender, police have conducted about 1.3 million DNA comparisons in Japan and abroad, but no matches have ever been found. There is still a 20 million yen reward being offered for information leading to an arrest of the killer, and investigators are still doing everything they can to find who committed this horrific crime. The motive remains unclear. It doesn't seem like the murders were a robbery gone wrong, but it also doesn't seem like it was targeted. But there was a lot of evidence left behind, and with the DNA technology continuing to advance and genetic genealogy becoming more and more common, there is hope that
of 2000. Let's talk about it. On April 3rd, 2000, 18-year-old Aaron Foster and 17-year-old Jeremy Bechtel went out for a drive in Sparta, Tennessee, and were never seen again. The case has been cold for over 2 decades until this week. Jeremy Sides, a scuba diver who runs a YouTube channel called Exploring with Nug, became interested in the case. He headed to Sparta, Tennessee from where he lived in Georgia and started conducting searches in the town's local waterways. Newly elected local sheriff Steve Page heard that Jeremy Sides was looking into the case, and they began exchanging messages on Facebook. The sheriff mentioned he believed investigators may not have been looking in the correct part of the county. Using a sonar-equipped raft to probe multiple rivers, Sides eventually discovered a 1998 Pontiac Grand Am in the Calf Killer River with human remains and a matching license plate to Aaron's missing car. On December 6, 2021, police are currently doing forensic tests on the car and have yet to officially confirm the identities of the bodies. Investigators haven't ruled out foul play, but they believe it's likely the pair lost control of the vehicle, accidentally resulting in it going into the river. Dive teams continue to explore the site looking for further clues. The most frustrating part of this case to me, though, is that the sheriff was quoted saying, "Rumors were that they went missing from a party near the west end of the county, but when I got to reading the file, I discovered they went missing from her house, which is an entirely different area of the county." Within hours of the sheriff telling Jeremy the location he expected they might be in, he discovered their bodies. This means for over 20 years, they weren't located going off of rumors, and no one took time to thoroughly read the file. He then said, in reference to Jeremy's sides, "He done what nobody had done before, got in that part of the water and just found the car. I prayed for this for years, that God would help me bring closure to their families." Like, maybe because somebody finally showed up to actually look for the kids instead of just praying for 2 decades without any action or hoping that they would be found. Unfortunately, Jeremy's mother passed away in 2018 without ever finding out what had happened to her son, but I'm glad there's finally closure for everyone else that's involved. Yesterday, a popular YouTuber found the remains of 2
perpetrator have been identified this year alone. On January 24th, Ricardo and Michael Sepulveda were arrested in connection to a John Doe cold case from November 19th, 1997. The body was found in a cornfield by a farmer in Blissfield Township, Michigan, and when the body was found, it was identified as a man, and the body was missing both the head and its hands. The victim's identity is still unknown, but I have seen speculation that it may be a man named Roberto, but of course the investigation is still ongoing. Both brothers have been charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, assault with the intent to maim, conspiracy to commit assault with the intent to maim, tampering with evidence, and conspiracy to commit tampering with evidence. This is a police sketch of Roberto, who they think may have been the victim. He was from Texas, and he was married with children, according to a witness. And the sketch is from 2016 and was based on a witness's interview. On February 6, 2 men were arrested in the connection of the murder of Laurel Mitchell, which happened on August 6 of 1975. Laurel was last seen leaving her summer job, which was at a church camp, and she left planning on meeting up with her friends. Sadly, she didn't make it home that night, and her body was found the next morning in Elkhart River. Her death was determined to be due to drowning, and her body had defense wounds from fighting as well as evidence of SA. Fred Bandy Jr. and John Lehman were both arrested and charged with first-degree murder. DNA from Laurel's clothes were finally able to connect them to the murder with the help of genealogy. On February 21st, Shannon Wilkerson was arrested in the murder of Amanda Gonzalez, who was 4 months pregnant, and the murder took place on November 3, 2001. The murder took place on a U.S. Army base in Germany, and Amanda was found laying on the floor in her barracks, and her death was determined to be due to asphyxiation. Shannon is being charged under the Military Extraterritorial Jurisdiction Act, which, quote, gives the U.S. federal court's jurisdiction over crime committed outside the United States by, among others, former members of the armed forces who are no longer subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. There is still a lot of information that hasn't been released because this case is ongoing, but Shannon has been charged with first-degree murder. On February 21st, the murder of Rita Curran was identified because of DNA that was found on a cigarette butt that was found near her body with the use of both DNA and genealogy analysis. William DeRuse was the man identified, and he was the upstairs neighbor of Rita and her roommates. On the night of the murder, July 19, 1971, he got into an argument with his wife and left the apartment for a short time. And later that night, Rita's roommate found her laying on the bedroom floor, strangled to death, severely beaten, and SA'd. Shortly after the murder, William fled to Thailand, became a monk, came back to the U.S. in 1974, got remarried, and died from an OD in a hotel in 1986. On January 23rd, the lady in the fridge was identified as Amanda Schumann Daza with a combination of DNA and genealogy analysis. Amanda was found in March of 1995 near Stockton, California, and her body was found inside of a refrigerator that was in an irrigation canal. Her death was determined to be caused by blunt force trauma to the head. She had her hands tied together and she was gagged. As of right now, her killer is still unknown.
Troubles. But when Bob approached her apartment door, he noticed that it was slightly ajar, and inside he could see her laying naked, bound in her own bed. A pillow was covering her head, but when that pillow was removed, her head was not there. Authorities were also able to determine that she had been sexually assaulted, and they also noticed a trail of blood leading from her bed, down the apartment steps, into the parking lot, and then the blood vanished. Elise's head had been taken by her murderer and presumably tossed into a car and driven who knows where. This left those who lived in the apartment complex, especially women, terrified. 27-year-old Mary Calcuta was one of those women who were absolutely terrified. She had lived 1 floor up from Elise, and she had recently moved from Pittsburgh. Sadly, only 14 days later, she would be found stabbed dozens of times. She put up a fight against the killer from her bedroom to the front door. Even detectives have commended her on how hard she fought and said that she was one of the very few victims they've seen who fought that hard. Tragically, though, the same day that she was found, a third victim was also discovered. 26-year-old Doris Lynn Threadgill. She had lived in a nearby townhouse and her throat was so deeply slashed that she was almost decapitated. As the Houston police were trying to investigate 3 homicides that were connected, a 4th and 5th one occurred on October 3rd of 1979. This time, the victims were teenagers who were dating Joanne Huffman and 18-year-old Robert Spagenberger. Neighbors had reported to Park Police that they saw a young girl screaming and being dragged by her hair by a man out of a house. They also claimed that they had heard gunshots. However, when the Park Police arrived, there was no girl there, and they told all of the neighbors that there was no blood on the porch, and that they probably just heard firecrackers and had somehow made up what they had seen. But when the Houston police arrived the next morning, October 4th, they ended up finding her body a few miles away with gunshot wounds, and they found blood on the porch. They had also found a white Dodge that had been abandoned, smeared with blood, and in the trunk was the headless body of Robert, or Bobby, her boyfriend. Now, some detectives believe that all 5 of these murders are definitively linked, whereas others believe that for sure the first 2 murders were linked to one killer, and that the last 2 victims were linked to one killer. Unknown if those were the same killer, but that is what they believe, and as for the 3rd murder, they don't know. But either way, after all of this time, none of these cases have been solved, and none of these victims' families
The prime suspect in the 2001 murder of Leslie Ann Prier, because for those 23 years, this homicide case was a lost cause. Up until now.
I'm trying to give you an opportunity to be a little bit forthcoming.
The Chevy Chase murder went unsolved for more than 2 decades.
I wish I could tell you.
But for those long years, detectives have chased every lead, every clue, and every witness they can to solve the murder of Leslie Prier.
I felt scared when I went to do the protective order. It was actually because he had threatened my boyfriend at the time.
And all of it leads back to Eugene.
There's no tears coming out of your face. Just don't
What
want
are you trying to say?
I'm just trying to say that this seems a little put on.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Oh my God, you're so full of it.
Leslie Ann Prier was a 48-year-old wife and mother living in an upscale Chevy Chase neighborhood outside Washington, D.C. She was known as a kind, gentle woman, and the type known to show up for her job as an administrative assistant at 10 a.m. sharp without fail. So when Leslie didn't show up to work on the morning of May 2nd, 2001, it immediately raised alarms for her boss, Brett. He tried calling, got nothing, and soon enough he was on the phone with Leslie's husband, Carl Prier. Within minutes, the two were heading back to Carl and Leslie's home to check on her. Unfortunately, the two never could have expected what they were about to step into. There were blood smears and spatter near the front door, and furniture knocked out of place. Brett called 911 while Carl panicked and started searching the house, hoping somehow Leslie was still okay.
I work for a company, and we didn't have a call from an employee. We just walked in the door, our husband and I, and there's blood in the foyer, and it looks like something possibly happened.
Okay.
By 11:47 a.m., police arrived. They told both men to step outside, did a sweep of the home, and upstairs in the master bathroom, they found Leslie. She was dead, lying in the shower with the water still running. Now detectives had one question: who was responsible for this? Naturally, their first focus was Carl. He was the person closest to her, and the last one known to be with her. And before officers even found the body, Carl had already searched through the house, yet somehow never checked the master bathroom. In their initial reports, first responders described this as suspicious behavior. But while detectives were building their early theory around Carl, another name crept into the investigation: Eugene Gligor. According to a tip from a neighbor, Eugene had dated Leslie's daughter in the past, and even back then, he had a reputation as a rowdy teen tied to underage drinking, drugs, and frequent disturbances. Moreover, Eugene and his family lived close to Leslie's home, about 10 minutes away. Still, the tip didn't get much traction at the time and was buried for the most part. Carl remained the priority, and investigators brought him in for an interview to try and get a statement from him.
What happened that night?
Basically, you mean after I got home or prior to that?
No, after you got home.
Basically, I had a couple beers, went upstairs, and went to bed about 9:40.
What kind of beers do you drink?
Bud Light, or may have been Miller in the bottle, but I think it usually Bud Light.
Do you keep that out of the fridge or is it downstairs?
It's down. It's downstairs. The downstairs refrigerator.
Okay, so you go down there to get your beer and bring it up?
Sometimes I drink it down there.
Okay.
What'd you do that night?
I probably drank it down there. I would think
3 or 4 beers.
Yeah, maybe 3.
Okay.
Where was she at that time?
She was upstairs.
Meaning?
No, I don't know. I don't think she's in the bedroom because usually she wouldn't go up there until after I went to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So she was upstairs.
What was she doing?
I honestly don't know.
So she's upstairs, you're downstairs, so you guys are not really communicating?
No, she kind of lets me unwind when I first get home.
Were you watching TV or anything downstairs?
No, no. In the basement.
What were you doing?
Probably just having a couple beers, taking my clothes off, taking my shoes off, just kind of unwinding.
Now this is in the basement?
This is in the basement.
Where in the basement? I mean, there's an interior place with a laundry.
We actually work in the cold case unit.
Alright guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. So, I want to thank you guys for watching, supporting the channel, doing all this shit, subscribing, following. You know the drill. If you've ever supported me, whether it was Rebel Doctor, whether it was Capone Waddell, whether it was, me as Sean Waddell, my brand is my brand. I've kept it real with you guys, from the time through me doing YouTube, back in the day, Facebook, you name it. It's been a wild ride as far, and it ain't stopping now. We are continuing to raise the bar and up the standards of this channel. Now, to the announcement. We have officially secured us a house in Tennessee. Let's fucking go. We are going back to my home state where I was born. So, Tennessee, here we come. Next video that I post might be, well, it won't be the next video, but it'll be next week's video. I'm going to be doing a special, probably house tour type vlog. So, again, I want to thank you guys for watching. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, and join the motherfucking film crew. Turn on that notification bell. Make sure to comment. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to do all the shit. Follow. First link in the bio of my Instagram. And you can also find it in the description of the channel. So, I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.